Okay, so welcome to day two, or technically the second video in the series of the 5-day fast track to make the absolute most out of your Playbook purchase and drive some more sales by the end of the week. So today we're going to be getting into what is the psychology of a sale, what actually is a sale, and how do we create that buying response in our prospect's brain? Because most people that I meet don't actually know what a sale is. They tend to just kind of talk and talk and talk and talk and hope that they throw everything and it sticks at the wall, and then the prospect magically turns around and says yes, which is probably why we see 7 to 10% conversion rates, right? But today, what we're going to figure out is exactly what is a sale. How do we create that in our buyer's mind so that they sell themselves to you and they actually feel compelled to want to work with you? So here's the big idea. The first thing is we want to get prospects to sell themselves instead of us pitching them. This is the core prep. We're not installing anything. We're uncovering what is below the surface. So when most people come to buy, they have this problem that they're experiencing that they're looking for us to understand and to elicit. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you've wanted to go buy something and the salesperson has just told you all of these things that don't matter. And you just want this one answer, right? Like I'm a very much like, I just need this answer. Like I've already done a lot of the decision making in my head already. I've already done the buying process in my head. So you're kind of just facilitating it. And those helpful people can actually get in the way of you making an easy decision. Third thing here is the process is transparent and ethical. This is how the psychology of how people make decisions. We're leading them towards what they already know and illuminating it for them. The mindset that you want to have is you want to earn the right to pitch, right? Just because they're on the call doesn't mean they should buy. We want to earn that right to pitch. We want to lead with curiosity, and we want to have this conversation, a great sales conversation, ends on a thank you like we talked about yesterday. So let's understand what actually is a sale. The best definition of a sale is understanding that it's the gap between what someone is experiencing right now versus where they expected that they would be by now. So let's just say that really slow, right? A sale is what is someone's current experience, their current reality, and what was their expectation? What did they think that they would have by now? So if we think about this in another way, now is defined as what's happened in the past, what problems, what is currently going on, what is their reality, what is the consequence of inaction. The expectation is also known as the future, their goals, their dreams, the desire, the future paced reality. So what would be happening 12 months from now? What is that dream state that they thought that would happen by now? And so if we look at this from a sales perspective, or specifically from the Playbook's perspective to go really meta here, what was your current reality before buying the Playbook? It might have been, I don't know what questions to ask, or I don't know how to handle objections, or I don't know how to close the sale. So how are those things a problem? Well, it might be costing you sales every time you jump on a sales call, right? You might be leaking money. If your product is worth $5,000 and you have 10 calls and only one of those is becoming a client, there's 9 other calls there that potentially could have been converted, which means 9 times 5 is $45,000 of opportunity cost and revenue that has been missed. And if that's happening every single month for a year, we're talking like $500,000, right? And so this is cognitive dissonance in action, right? In some level, you had an experience of now that was affecting you in a way where it was creating a problem, right? So the lack of questions, the lack of understanding sales, etc. If you're a salesperson, it could be like, you're not making enough commission. There's some kind of reality that is different from your expectation. So if we look at the expectation of the Playbook for you, it's likely to make more sales. Or you might just be curiosity driven, right? You just want to know what the neurolinguistic questions are. The other thing is like you just might want to feel more confident selling. You might want to know exactly what to say in order to get prospects to do the selling to you rather than trying to convince them. You might want to know exactly how to prevent objections before coming up. And you want to do it in a way that feels natural, that feels easy and effortless. You might want to do it in a way that doesn't make you sound and pretend to be someone that you're not. You want to do it without selling. So in some sense, in order to create that $12 sale, there was a small gap here. And so you're saying, okay, that's just a $12 sale. Well, the only difference between the $12 sale and the $12,000 sale is how well we can stretch that gap. And so if we only create a small gap between what someone is experiencing now and their expectation, we can only put a small product in there. But if we stretch that gap, if we give it more legs, like I did with that example of, you might only have a 10% conversion ratio. So that's now costing you $45,000 a month, $12,000 a year. This is something that we call a financial contrast frame or financial opportunity cost, which is making you turn that small sales problem that you had into a larger sales problem that you potentially had. But the key thing here is it has to be true for you. So I would do that. I would ask you those questions in the conversation. I would say, Okay, cool. So how many sales are you closing at the moment? Okay. And if 10 prospects came to you, how many become clients? You might say 2. Great. And what's that average sale worth? You would say 5,000. Great. So you're making about $10,000 a month. And there's potentially 8 other sales on the line, which means it's an opportunity cost of 8 times 5, which is $40,000 a month. Okay, cool. And so this is a way of establishing facts, but also stretching that dissonance, stretching that expectation and that reality. And so if we go one layer deeper now, before there's another layer to this called emotion logic, but let's just talk about why should we even care about cognitive dissonance? And so I think the thing that goes underrated here is the beauty of establishing cognitive dissonance in our buyer's mind is that it starts to bring them through the 5 stages of consumer awareness in the same conversation. And so if you're not familiar with this was Schwartz's sort of idea around consumers go through 5 stages of awareness. They start off in a stage of unaware, so they don't really know that they have a problem. Then they move to problem aware, solution aware, product aware, and most aware. And so what we're doing is, or what most traditional sales does, is it rushes straight to the 4th stage, and it assumes that the prospect is product aware of their irresistible offer on the first call. And they're trying to one call close this person, right? And at any one point, your market is probably not there. And I've been guilty of this as well, right? Where, people have coming through the playbook and we offer them an opportunity to work with us one-on-one, but they might not have those problems right now. The problem might not be big enough. And so over time, as we build that relationship, they're going to become more aware of the different problems. And this is something that we call chain marketing or chain market problems, which is for every problem that is solved, there's another one that opens up. And the example that we give is, if you are hungry, you make dinner, right? So you feed yourself. But then after you've provided that solution for yourself, there's a new problem, which is now you have to do dishes. And so this is this flow that we're sort of going through in the sales conversation, is when we sell with cognitive dissonance and we understand what's going on for them, we actually start illuminating problems. We take them from unaware to problem aware. The problem being the gap between where they are now and where they expected that they would be. Then when we sell with the reverse selling, which we're going to get into tomorrow, we actually make them solution aware by asking them directly, now that we've established your problem, what do you need from us in order to solve that? So we actually get them to tell us a solution. And then we look at handling objections, and only right at the end do we actually start making them product aware about what we do. So we actually take care of these first 3 stages. We move our prospects from unaware to solution aware before we pitch, which is why it converts better than traditional sales skills. So we do this in the 7-step consult method. This is the stuff that I'm going to be teaching over the next few days. The first thing is the curiosity, which is a mindset we talked about, owning the frame. And then the 3rd step is, what do they need now? The 4th step is seeing the future. We're going to talk about something called utilizing answers. So a questioning technique that we have, listening for objections and pre-handling those, and then ending on a thing. That's the 7-step consult show. And we have an accelerator that goes much deeper on this as well. If you want to know more about that, just send us an email and I can see those details. So this is something that I want you to dig into now, right? And this is something called the island exercise. So the island exercise is, if you imagine that there are 3 islands. We have Suck Island, which is the island that everything is bad on. And then we have Party Island, where everything is great, and you stand in the middle. Now, your job as the person in the middle is to be the shepherd or the toll gate between the 2 islands, right? If someone wants to leave Suck Island, they want to go to Great Island, you are just clipping the ticket along the way. And so in this specific example, what we're looking at here is, what are the Suck Island? What are the things that suck for your prospect or are bad for your prospect? What does that island look like? And so we're using the sales example here, where island 1 for someone who has a sales problem, they have low sales conversion. That's what sucks. They have too many objections. They don't feel confident in their ability to close ideal prospects. They have their ideal prospects slip through their fingers and go to competitors. They have no shows, unqualified applicants, et cetera, right? These are some of the things that suck. And so your job in this exercise, which I'd really encourage you to do right now, is to pull out a piece of paper, pull out a doc, and just make 3 islands and 3 tables, and just think about, for your avatar, what are all of their problems? What does their sucky island look like? And then on the other island, we look at, what does great look like? So let's just stick with the sales example because it's the easiest. What would a great island be for you if you're looking to get better at sales? It would be having the confidence to know that if you jumped on the phone, you knew exactly what to say to predictably close an ideal client. They said yes, paid $5,000, $10,000 in full, and they were good to go. You would have a really high conversion, right? So you talk to 10 people, at least 6 of them becoming clients. You would know how to prevent objections, right? So instead of getting, I need to think about it, or now's not the right time, or it's too expensive, you understand how to stop those things early or plant seeds to make overcoming those really easy later in the call. This is something we call linguistic seeding. We'll explain more about that at another point. The next thing would be doubling sales revenue, right? So if you can add 2 to 3 sales every single month just by using the playbook, and those sales are worth like $5,000 to $10,000 each, then the $12 or even, anything else that you've invested makes the price irrelevant, because if you close one sale or 2, 3 sales, in this case, you're massively increasing your revenue, therefore your profitability. So your job is to dive into this exercise and to think about, for your market, is their sucky island? What is their great island? So go and do that now. Or you can listen to this and come back and do it, but I highly encourage you to, because bringing the language of what our prospects experience to life as part of the soft skills of sales that people don't really understand is trust and expertise goes to the people that can language our problems better than we can. And so trust and expertise is associated to the people that can language our problems better than we can. So we can't technically feel something or experience something if we can't language it. So this is specifically in regards to emotions, where it's like, sometimes when we have this heavy feeling, we don't know how to access what that feeling is. So we can't feel it to release it if we don't know what it is. It's the same when you jump on a sales call. Like if someone says to you, hey, the reason why you're losing sales is because of this, right? And they're able to label it for you, actually point to it. We associate a ton of trust and expertise to that person. And so by doing the island exercise, you give yourself that advantage that when your prospects show up, you can point to the problem and say, that's the problem. So let's talk about emotion and logic. So there's another part that we add to this expectation of where you thought it would be by now, is the emotional side and the logical side. So there's a left side, which is logical, right side, which is emotional, part of your buyer's brain. Both of these need to be activated in order to trigger what we call the hidden buying response, also known as cognitive dissonance. And so this is really key here, right? Most sales training only addresses the logical side of things. It's benefit-based. And when we only have a logical sale, it's just extremely prevalent in the B2B space, is we get lots of, that's nice, it's not a right now thing. There's no urgency. However, what we've seen in some of the consulting space, especially some of the emotional consulting space, like with Tony Robbins and that kind of thing, is it's emotion to emotion. So you go into these rooms, you get super hyped up and talk about your pain, and it's all emotional. And so we buy up emotion. There's lots of urgency there, but there's no logic to back that decision up. So they see higher refund rates and buyer's remorse. So the magic is in balancing both, because then we get urgency backed up by logic. So logic is defined as anything external to the person or concepts outside of them. Emotion is defined as anything internal, inside of them, feelings and states. And so what we would do now is we would jump back into our island exercise and we would think about which ones of these are emotional, which ones are logical. And as you can see by the island, we only have logicals. Conversion is external, objections, not feeling confident. There you go. That's our first emotional one. So that's good. Having ideal prospects slip through your fingers. So what we want to ask ourselves is, like, what would our prospect be feeling if they had these things? How is it affecting them? How does low conversion and too many objections? Well, you probably feel a little bit hopeless, right? You probably feel confused. Like, what the heck? Because I thought this call was going so well. And then the person just completely disappeared and goes to me. Like, what have I done wrong? It's confusion, overwhelm, etc. Now, if we flip that, if you knew that you could predictably close clients and high conversion, prevent objections, they said, yeah, I'm in. You'd probably feel excited about sales calls. You would probably feel maybe even relief, sense of security, because you're making extra money now. So we want to look at now all of the emotions and add that to our island exercise. So what that looks like is, we have the reality of now and we have the expectation of where they thought they would be by now. And now we have split that into two, logic and emotion. Pretty straightforward, right? And this is what we're going to come to know as the code of the sale. So your job in any sales conversation is to be ticking off some emotion and ticking off some logic, but specifically separating them. So if this is a sales conversation about how you can be better at sales, I would go through the checklist. I would say, okay, cool. So what's your current challenges with sales? You might say low conversion. You might say prospects ghosting me. You might say too many objections. So we have 3 logic. Now I want 3 emotion. So how's that affecting you? I'm frustrated. I feel hopeless and I'm just confused what the hell I'm doing wrong. Fantastic. Now we have 3 logic and we have 3 emotion. And that ticks off the first part of the sales conversation. It can really be this simple. But when we break it down like this, what you'll notice is most people they're not precise with their questions, right? So that was a very precise, very clean example because I'm role playing with myself. But this is just giving you an idea of what we need to dig for, what we need to do by using the questions in the playbook to elicit those out. We want 3 emotional problems that they're experiencing with the logical problem that they're experiencing. And, if we use, let's say, for example, a different industry, right? Let's use like personal training. So this person, in order to buy personal training, this person, logically, their problem is I'm overweight. Another logical problem is I'm lethargic. I have no energy. Another logical problem is binge eating. They're eating all the time. So we've got our 3 logical problems. How's it affecting them personally? Well, they probably feel like they have low self-esteem. They probably feel hopeless and like they have no control. And they probably feel a bit confused about what they can do. And so that would establish a reality of now that balances 3 emotion and 3 logic, right? The left and the right brain. So then we contrast that against the expectation. So where did you expect that you'd be by now? So the person probably turns around and says, I probably thought I'd be 20 kilos lighter, or pounds, wherever you're listening in from. Probably be 20 pounds, and I would have healthy habits, and I would be consistent and motivated in the gym. Let's just say consistent at the gym, because motivates an emotion. Okay, great. And if you had those things, so if you had lost the 20 kilos, you were now 100, you were feeling more confident, you were consistent at the gym, and you lost the 20 kilos, and you had healthy habits, what would that mean to you? Well, I would feel confident. I would feel happy, and I'd feel proud of myself. Now we have our 3 logic, and we have our 3 emotion. And this is what we call a level 1 problem. So this is the base level. Every sales conversation needs to hit this point of 3 emotion and logic of the reality of now, and 3 emotion and logic of the expectation or the future. Okay, that's level 1. For a sale to occur, that needs to happen. Where sales are occurring is probably you've accidentally done this. So this is the core of all sales. Where sales aren't happening is because this isn't done. And this is the 80-20 rule. This is 80% of what's responsible for the things that happen at the end of the call. So I was training a sales team this morning. They're looking to do like $500,000 a month in sales. I was listening into one of the calls, and sure enough, all we got on that call in the discovery was 3 logics of the future. So they missed the emotional implication of those logical outcomes for the future. And they also missed what they're experiencing now, what emotional frustrations that they might have had, what logical challenges or problem that they might have had with their existing, real estate portfolio. So there was no gap. There was no dissonance discovered. And sure enough, the prospect objected, like, I'm not sure, let me get back to you. But all of that translated is the gap you created doesn't make sense in my mind. I don't feel like you understand my problem. And so this is why selling this way is so important, is because it gets your prospects to feel understood. And when this is lit up, they actually feel compelled to want to close it with you. And so that brings us to of understanding that there's actually 3 levels of sales. So level 1 is where we establish that base cognitive dissonance, which is that 3 logic. That's level 1. That has to happen for a sale to occur. Then level 2 is where we introduce time as a consequence. So what I mean by that specifically is what we would say is, so, let's say, for example, you're feeling frustrated, confused, and hopeless when it comes to your sales results. And that's because you are struggling with objections, you're not converting enough, and you're just not making enough money. Did I miss anything? No. Okay. So funny question, but let's say that you and I are catching up this same August next year, and you had the same problems. What's life like for you? So this is what we call time as a consequence. So that time question now pulls that level 1 problem that we've created out into a level 2. Then what we would do is we would expand on that. So we'd tell me more about that, etc., blah, 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 what's going on. And then we pull that out one more time to try and reach the really core problem, which would take us to level 3, which I'll explain in a minute. But on the other side, we want to do the same thing. So if you were feeling confident, secure, and inspired for your sales conversations because you were converting really well, you were making 2 to 3 more sales a month, making $5,000 to $10,000 more a month. And if you did all that, and we had this conversation, what changes 12 months from now? And so that now uses time, what changes 12 months from now, to stretch us out into the future. So we're pulling this level 1 problem from a small one to a big one so that we can put our product in the middle. Because if the gap is big enough, then the price is irrelevant, right? So in order to sell higher ticket things, we have to have bigger gaps, right? Small gap, small price, big gap, big price, effectively, if you want to distill it down. So level 3 is where we elicit the consequences of the entire process so far. So what I mean by that is we take all of this, right? So we've just said, 12 months from now, you're exactly the same. What's that like for you? And they would say, oh, it's this, this, and this. So we would then elaborate on that, which we're going to talk about the questioning in a minute. We call these utilization primes in the playbook. We said, so tell me more about that. Okay, cool. Tell me more. Okay, now if we took all of this again, what other areas of life do you think this would affect? So that third stage is now anchoring the problem into other areas of life. So we would say, so let's say, for example, your sales results haven't changed. You're still feeling stressed about sales. It sucks. You still got low conversions. You're missing $45,000 a month. How do you think that might affect other areas of your life? How does it affect your ability to go on holiday? How does it affect how much you're working? How does it affect your relationships, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? So we start linking to other areas of life. That's how we get to the level 3 problem. That's the real magic. That's when we start seeing conversion rates jump from 45% all the way up to 50, 60%. right? And if we were sort of gauge this on like a percentile of closing, like level 1 should net you a 10 to 20% conversion rate. Level 2 is where we start going 20 to 30. Level 3 is where we jump from 30 to 50. Now, it's really easy to get someone converting at 20% of their sales calls because most people don't have a structure, right? As soon as we deploy the structure and you follow the structure, you'll just make more calls, right? It's like, how do I explain this? It's like most people just wing it and they don't have a blueprint or a framework to follow. Therefore, every call is different. Therefore, we can't really measure what's going wrong. Therefore, they have poor conversion. This is why we can be so confident in your ability to make a sale by following the process, because we have a process and you probably don't have a process, right? So it's kind of inevitable. You deploy our process, you will make more sales. This is why we're just, we're so certain about this. But the difficult thing is, how do we take someone that's converting at 30% to 50, 60% and do that consistently month in and month out? And that's the kind of stuff that we cover in our more advanced communities, our accelerators and that kind of thing. Is that's, if you want that extra help getting to that extra level, that's what we do. So those are the 3 levels of sales. Your goal, don't worry about level 2 and 3 right now. Like if you are not converting at 20%, all I want you to focus on, 3 emotion, 3 logic of the problems of right now, 3 emotion, 3 logic of the future expectation. And you have questions inside of the playbook to help you with that. So let's talk about my favorite questioning structure. So my favorite questioning structure, we call the CDE, curious, define, and elaborate. Now, in order to make this work, we need to have no assumptions about the answer. We need to define the terms of their question, and we need to get them to elaborate. And these really funny clips of Jordan Peterson online, where like somebody says something and there's that meme. It's like, but it depends what you mean by the definition of the question of the words that you're saying. And technically he's actually right, but it sounds really pretentious. And this is, you'll notice this about Jordan's Peterson's. If you've ever seen any of his stuff, the way he thinks is it's through this kind of filter. It's always like, but what did you mean by that? Right? So someone will say, do you believe in God, Jordan Peterson? And you say, but what do you mean by believe? So with him, these are no assumptions ever. And this is the key to asking great questions, is if somebody says something. So someone says, I want to make more clients. We don't assume what make more clients mean. So we want to dig into that, right? Curious first. So what did you mean by more clients? Can you define that? Like, oh, cool. It would be like if I could do 2 to 3 more clients a month, that'd be great. Okay. Like, what are those clients worth to you? So defining, right? Well, average sales about $5,000 to $10,000. Interesting. So that's probably 3 times 10, that's $30,000 a month. Can you tell me more about how that would affect the business? Now we're getting into the elaboration. These are the utilization primes in the playbook. I said, well, $30,000 a month in the business would be game changing. It would completely, would flip the business on its head. Now, this is just one thing that we've defined, right? They said more clients. So we were curious, we defined, we elaborated. And now we're at this place where this person is telling us about how it would be game changing to reach that. And so this is the power of this curious, define, elaborate, is whenever we hear something from prospect, what did they mean by that? Define the terms of it and then get them to elaborate on it. And so let's use another one. Let's just say, for example, it's a problem. And you said, I'm just not converting enough calls. So I would say, well, what do you mean by not converting enough calls? Like literally just flip it back. Oh, well, blah, 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 something. Okay. And when you're not converting enough calls, how many are you converting? Let's say if we gave you 10, well, I'd probably be 1 if we're lucky. Okay. So 1 in 10 are converting right now. Yeah. And so how's that affecting you? Or how's that affecting the business? Can you tell me more about how that's affecting you or how that's affecting the business? So then we go into the elaboration. So curious, define, elaborate. Think of Jordan Peterson, and someone called it semantic fog, right? And it's funny because it's true, but also at the same time, as a salesperson, it's beautiful. Like Jordan would be a killer salesperson, I reckon, because there's never an assumption. And this is the key thing that I think will make you even better at sales, is assume nothing. A mentor of mine used to say, Caleb, assumptions are the origins of all mistakes. I just thought that was beautiful, right? Like, isn't that just stunning? Anyway, so I trust today was valuable. Tomorrow, we're going to be jumping in to how do we then transition what we've done? We built the level 1, 2, or 3 problem. How do we then transition into the close and get them to buy from us? Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you tomorrow. Speak soon.